I finally have time to do a video about the Quran burning in Sweden, and I want us all as Europeans to look at this situation because it is impacting the safety of all of us. And I'm not saying that because all Muslims are terrorists, because that's daft. I'm saying it because what we are doing is we are promoting ourselves again in yet another way as being disrespectful, as being intolerant of Muslim society, of being intolerant of the, you know, largest religion in the world. And that does not look good for us. Now, I think we should all have a deeper look at Sweden and have a look at what's gone on there and have a look at what's happening to Sweden on the world stage and maybe think about making some different decisions about how we choose to show our respect or lack of for our international partners. So Sweden has had embassies burned down. It's had evictions of its diplomats from various different countries in both the Middle East, Africa. It's been roundly criticised for how it's dealt with this situation from countries as far-reaching as Latin America. Pretty much every country with any sort of reality has criticised Sweden for the behaviour of the government and of the police in response to this. And that is a really, really important comment to make, because when we watch or listen to Western media, for example, The Guardian did a long article about how it was Russians who paid for the Quran to be burned and all this nonsense. What we do is we miss the reality. And the reality is that the issue is not necessarily the act, although the act was atrocious. The issue is how the Western policy, the Western governments, the Western police forces have dealt with it. And they dealt with it by stopping counter-protests. They dealt with it by refusing to criminalise the people who had engaged in this. They dealt with it by giving permits for it to happen in the first place. All of this looks really, really, really bad on us, okay? Forget about how you feel about Islam. Forget about the brainwashing you've had about how Islam is all about harming people and killing people and all of that, which, to be honest, if true, why would you want to do this in the first place? It makes no sense. Forget about all of that. Think about what we are putting forward when we say we don't care about what you find disrespectful. We don't care about what you consider to be an insult. We're going to do it anyway because we believe in free speech. When we live in a culture where if people talk about genderism, they're cancelled. If people talk about Judaism, they're cancelled. If people talk about war and NATO, they're cancelled. So we aren't practicing what we're preaching on any level whatsoever. But when it comes to burning the Quran, yeah, go right ahead, do it in public, we'll film you, we'll give you permits to do so, we'll refuse to make it a criminal offence. You know, it's just not appropriate. And it comes from this Western arrogance that we have, that somehow we have something so valuable that the rest of the world absolutely have to have it, and therefore we can get away with behaving in these ways. It's not true. It's quite simply not true, okay? We do not produce anything, we do not provide anything that countries can't get from elsewhere. So if we want to keep getting the resources that we're sanctioning ourselves out of, a rate of knots, we actually have to show some respect for different cultures. And it's not about respecting the cultures, it's about showing respect for different cultures, because quite frankly, it doesn't matter whether you agree, it doesn't matter whether you approve, None of that matters. What matters is that we are showing respect for different cultures. And I have to say, Vladimir Putin did exactly this. He received a Quran. He is an Orthodox Christian, very, very devout one. And he received a Quran, and he received it with respect, because it's not about the Quran being needed for him. It's about showing that he respects the person that's giving him that book and the culture that's giving him that book. And that means that Muslims in Russia will be more comfortable with living in Russia when they see this. What we've essentially done in Sweden and in the EU as a whole, and in Europe as a whole, in the West, is we've shown that Muslims are not safe in our culture. When people feel unsafe, they are likely to do dangerous things. They are likely to join extremism. They are likely to kick back. And most succinctly, they are likely to show us a similar lack of respect to they have been shown. And this is not conducive to having a good trade relation with the rest of the world. So fundamentally, what I'm saying here is that when we show disrespect to other cultures, eventually what we're doing is we are creating an unsafe, unworkable relationship for ourselves. Sweden is a small country on the international scale. Sweden's not part of any military alliance. They're not part of NATO, so it's just little Sweden all on its own. And yet it felt justified to disrespect a large amount of international partners in this way, and then doubled down and continued to show that disrespect, even as it became clear just how outrageous that was and how upsetting it was for literally billions of people around the world, Muslim and otherwise, and continued to push that. What this has done is it's made Sweden, historically safe place, an unsafe one. The Ministry of Defence in the UK has released the Foreign Office has released a warning to travellers going to Sweden because there's likely to be terrorist attacks. It's been kicked out of various diplomatic situations and offices around the world. Sweden is swiftly pushing itself into a position where it has no seat at the table. And the EU is now under scrutiny because the EU is failing to push back against this obvious terrorist attack. And this is something that affects all of us. As it affects all of us when the French and the EU push ECOWAS into a war between Niger and Nigeria. It comes back on us. It reflects on us. So it shouldn't just be Muslim countries who are angry about the burning of the Quran, just like it shouldn't be African countries who are angry about the insistence of a war between Niger and Nigeria. It should be us that are angry, because this is not the sort of energy that we can afford to have. And I'm sorry to put it like that, but I have to speak to you people as if you're selfish, because that's all that the West is showing me right now. From a selfish perspective, we are making ourselves inhospitable trading partners, and that is going to be a huge problem moving forward. We don't need that. We don't want that. And trust me, it is not what is best for us. So even if you don't care about Muslims, even if you don't care about people from Niger, please think about what these actions and what this diplomacy or lack of is doing to you and your family's national security, because I can assure you that it is not doing good things. I hope this gets sorted out quickly, but it seems the further we get from the point, the more difficult it's going to be to dig out of that hole, and that's a real shame. I am ashamed to be white, I have to say. That's me on this subject. Please do follow me on YouTube. Diplomacy is free. Find me on Telegram. Diplomacy is free. Consider supporting me via Buy Me a Coffee or Patreon. God bless, and I will speak to you all soon.